What is up, everybody? Welcome back for another edition of the Big Five Pod, episode number 119. I'm, of course, your co-host, Kyle Morello. Next to me, co-host Jake Kopstick. Cope, how we doing?
Good, Kyle. Today is draft day. I'll put the Broncos hat on briefly. We'll be waiting quite a while unless they trade up because they pick at number 20. But today is draft day, and although was not able to, honestly, the last 3 years, just with my work schedule, really haven't been able to lock in on college football. But I don't really care. The draft has aura. The draft
It's an event.
runs. It's a spectacle.
Yeah.
I'll watch it every year, every single year.
It's entertaining. And Cope, I think, actually, shout out to my coworker, Chris Langton, for the stat. He read this in the office today. But this is the first draft, as of that we're recording this, an hour and a half before the draft. On Thursday night. So at this moment, every team owns their original pick going into the draft for the first time since I think it was 1967. So before the merger. There have not been any picks traded. I believe there have not been any first-round picks traded for other players or whatnot. I could be wrong about that specific stat, but going into draft night, everyone owns their pick in the NFL for the first time since 1967, which is pretty crazy. I'm excited, but also Cope. New York Knicks basketball tonight, game 3 against the Pistons. Need a bounce back. I'm not feeling great at the moment. We'll see what happens.
Great series, though. Great series.
Great series
so far.
Maybe the 7-foot center that you gave up your part of your identity for, who's the best shooting big maybe of all time. Maybe get him some pick and pops. Just an idea. If you look over in Boston, they're doing all right with that concept. I think we can probably replicate that with a better player. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And Mets are hot right now, too. Just swept the Phillies this past week, Cope. So I know you're happy about that. A lot going on.
I've had no time to lock in on baseball.
Yeah, I know.
I need a nap.
Hey, listen, we're about a week away from sleeping. Could be sleeping in May. So all good there. But, Cope, despite all the other sports going on, the college basketball world is still humming right now. We got a lot to go over in this episode. Maybe not so much as we have in the past. It's going to start to kind of dwindle down as we get into May and June here. Transfer portal closed on Tuesday night, 22nd. So if you're in, you're in. Can't get in the transfer portal. You can only go to the draft. It's the only place you can go. Or other places professionally, as we're going to go over in a little bit here as well. So, Cope, why don't we start with your quick hitters? Grab that ball, run that break. Let's do it.
All right, Kyle, we'll start off with some coaching news here. So this is not a Big Five hire, but this is an ex-Big Five coach who found a new spot. So former Penn assistant coach Chris Salle, he was just named an assistant coach at Iona to be under Springfield, Pennsylvania's very own Dan Giroux, who just took over that job. Chris spent the previous 3 seasons under Steve Donahue at Penn. He's from D.C., but he plays college ball at Widener, so knows this area, obviously knows D.C. well. Good on Dan Giroux for having Chris land on his feet, and guy who's got most of the major players, cities in the Northeast corridor on lock. So happy for Chris. I got to know him a little bit at Penn, so happy for him that he found himself on his feet, lands in a new spot. Really good program in the back, probably the perennial one in the league. So good for him. Schedule news, Kyle. Real quick tidbit here: Villanova, their non-conference schedule, as well as the other Big Five teams, going to start to trickle in. This will be something we talk about a ton in the offseason as the schedule comes together. They're going to play Sacred Heart on Tuesday, November 11th at Finneran Pavilion. Very likely, Kyle, I think the signs point to this being Kevin Willard's home opener. Villanova is going to open the season against BYU in Las Vegas. We probably talked about that maybe a month ago when it broke. Obviously, a huge marquee game out in Las Vegas. You said the first game this year was like the 4th or the 5th?
Yeah, the first game this year was November 4th, so I'm guessing the first game will be November 5th next year on that Monday.
I think there's a good chance that with the West Coast travel, this ends up being their second game of the year, and this ends up being Kevin Willard's home opener. Last year, not really one you could take a precedent for because they tried to load the schedule up so Eric Dixon didn't have to miss the Holy War. But regardless, I think this is going to be Kevin Willard's home opener. Mark your calendars. Get excited, people. I miss college basketball already. Get excited. November 11th, circle it, bold it. Sacred Heart, Pioneers, coming to the main line. Very likely, again, Kevin Willard's home opener, his first game at Villanova. Kyle will breeze through some Big Five transfers committing elsewhere. We'll break down the ones that are coming in. We'll quick just roll through the ones that are going out. We'll start with Drexel, Kyle. How about this? Jason Deuce Drake commits to Indiana to play for the Hoosiers at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. He transferred to Drexel from Butler Community College last year, being a JUCO product. His lone season at Drexel, 11.1 points, 3.1 assists, a near 40% three-point shooter. And it was his play, William Garcia Adjudan's play, Shane Blakeney's play. You know what you're going to get from Yame Butler, Cole Hargrove, Kobe McGee. That supporting cast, those other guys, Deuce Drake especially, were a huge reason why this team had success down the stretch and were playing their best basketball when it mattered into March. From February 1st on, 14.5 points, 3.7 assists. Kyle, 42.5% from three. This guy, Deuce Drake, rode a very hot end to the season, and literally, figuratively, he's going to cash in to play for Darian DeBreeze's inaugural Hoosiers team. So good for him. Like, think about this, Kyle. This time last year, he's trying to find a spot. He was a JUCO guy. Went to Cleveland State, didn't play much. He's playing in JUCO at Butler Community College. That guy's now going to be playing at Assembly Hall. Wow. Good for him. Yeah. Good for him. So, good season for Deuce Drake. Obviously, it sucks that they're not able to retain a guy like that, but hey, pretty cool the journey that guy's had to now play for Indiana. So good for Deuce Drake. He's the lone Drexel portal guy and the last, because they've only had 4 guys in and they've had 4 guys commit already. So moving on to LaSalle, couple commitments here. First, Tunde Volberg Fasasi commits to William and Mary. He's going to be moving down leagues, going to the CAA. Stockholm, Sweden native, 2 seasons at LaSalle, 5.9 points, 2.7 rebounds, just a tick under 35% from three. But you give Brian Earl, who loves to play that frenetic pace, he's going to sub people in and out, almost make hockey line changes. A big forward who can stretch the floor, that's exactly who he's trying to get in there. He's going to have guards that can shoot and play fast. He needs some complementary pieces around him. A big guy who can play the 3, can play the 4, space the floor. Seems like a pretty good fit to me, and we'll be talking about him when William and Mary comes to play Drexel next year. Another LaSalle guy, Kyle. Ryan Zan, he committed to Fairfield. Also, 2 seasons at LaSalle for him. He played in 51 games, made 6 starts, averaged 2.2 points, 1.4 rebounds a game this past year. So good for him, moving down to Fairfield, more playing time, a bigger role for him. Go where you're going to play. Yeah. Go where you're going to play in the midst of a coaching change. He's sticking around in the Northeast, going to play for Fairfield. Kyle, one of the bigger ones here, maybe the biggest that we've had, at least on this episode, to talk about. Sam Brown going to Davidson. Moving up from Penn to the Atlantic 10. Really like this move. Obviously, like a rocky start to the season. But when he got into Ivy League play, he was one of, if not the best player in the league, he was one of them. Like strictly just on the numbers, you look at how good of a 3-point shooter he was, taking care of the ball, sharing the ball. Like in a league that had Xavier Lee, Bez Mbeng, some really good players, John Poulikitis. In Ivy League play, this guy was right up there with them. 13.9 points, 2.3 assists per game, shot 43% from 3 in Ivy League play, Kyle. That's after a year last year in his freshman season. He was a 40% 3-point shooter for the year. So top 20 assist rate, 6th overall in turnover percentage in Ivy League play.
And a 40-piece too.
Sharing, caring, 42 points like you mentioned against Columbia on March 1st. One of the all-time best Quaker performances in recent memory. So it's a little bittersweet because I thought he would have been really good in Fran McCaffrey's style of play. But to go to Davidson, they're going to run good half-court stuff. They're going to run good stuff for shooters, for himself to get open, to shoot threes. This is a really good pairing, I think. It's a shame he's not a Penn. This is a damn good landing spot for Sam Brown. So good luck to him. And he's another guy. He's going to the A-10. We'll be talking about this guy quite a bit next season. Kyle, we'll move on to Temple. This is another one that's bittersweet because Dylan Batee committed to Wichita State, who, of course, Temple is going to have to play against in the AAC play next year. So 1 year at Temple, 3.6 points, 1.8 rebounds, played in 20 games in his freshman season. He's going to be closer to home, being that he's from Dallas, Texas. But a Temple legacy whose father went there, who I think showed enough promise to be really excited about what he could bring this year. Aiden Tobiason's back, Babatunde Doradola's back. But I love what I saw from this guy at times. A big time athlete, big, strong, offensive rebounds, energy. Like, look, as a freshman, it's going to be up and down, but I was super excited for this guy to come back. It's a shame he's not, and especially a shame that you're going to have to play against him now. So Dylan Matee off to the Shockers, off to Wichita State. A handful of Nova guys talk about here, Kyle. First, Alexander Sashka-Valyagov. He's headed to Santa Clara. Just 4 games as a freshman for Villanova last year. Likely has grounds for a red shirt. Should have all 4 years of eligibility remaining. His highlight of the season, 6 points against Temple in the Big 5 Classic third place game where they really put a beating on the Owls. But for him to transfer down, it's a good spot for him with a really good coach in my eyes in Herb Sendek. 20-plus wins 5 of the last 6 years. The one year they didn't was that truncated COVID season where Santa Clara only played 20 games and they went 12-8. But this Broncos team, Kyle, finished 59 in Ken Palm. Villanova finished 56. This is a really good team last year.
Yeah.
Really, really good team. 12-6, the best conference record under Herb Sendek. So for a guy who has, you saw flashes of the skill in game, to transfer down, hopefully gets a lot more playing time. And if he still has those 4 years to grow and continue to get better, like I think this guy's going to be a player wherever he's at. But for now, he will be playing for the Santa Clara Broncos. Next, Kyle, Josiah Mosley from Round Rock, Texas. He's going home, Kyle. He's going to play for the Texas Tech Red Raiders and Grant McCaslin. Played in 30 games for Villanova as a freshman. 1.9 points and 2.3 rebounds per game averages. And although he doesn't have the shooting, his defense screams a Red Raider, screams a Grant McCaslin player. And he's going to fit right in. And again, the shooting is not there, but that's okay. They bring back Christian Anderson, one of the premier freshmen in all of the country. He's a good three-point shooter. You look at the transfers they brought in. LaJuan Watts from Washington State, Donovan Atwell from UNC Greensboro. Like, these guys are all Tyree Bryan, who came from Santa Clara, who we just talked about. These guys are all really good three-point shooters. That's fine. He doesn't have to shoot, but he'll bring the defense, good size, athlete length. Like he's gonna fit right in, albeit without that shooting. But I think it's a damn good pickup for Texas Tech. Villanova's loss. It's Texas Tech's gain. 3 years of eligibility left for Mr. Mosley as he goes back home. And then lastly, Kyle, the Villanova freshman class from last year really getting pillaged here as Malcolm Thomas just committed today to Dayton. So he was a top 150 recruit, did not play in any games last year, but lauded for his size, his athleticism. He's headed to the A-10. We'll be seeing him as well. They seem to go far, Kyle, but they're never, they're never
arm's length.
Yeah, they're never. It's not like you're sending them off to Siberia. They could be going somewhere crazy. We'll end up seeing these guys a bunch next year.
Other than Sash, who's going across the country. But
yeah, he'll find Santa Clara will find their way in a like Feast Week tournament to end up playing one of these teams.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're never too far away, are they?
No.
So Kyle, moving on to some administrative news, if that's what you'd like to call it. So this week, there's been the implications and the punishments from an investigation into Fordham that came down. They were announced. And obviously Fordham, like they just hired Mike Magpio from UC Riverside. We spoke about that. Keith Ergo was let go after 3 years that I don't necessarily agree with. I think Mike Magpio is a very good coach, will do well there, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with the dismissal of Ergo. But point being here, Kyle, why is it relevant to us? Fordham's going to have to vacate 41 wins from the 2021-2022 season under Kyle Neptune. So 16 wins from that year. And then the next year, 2022-2023, Keith Ergo was the coach there. He won 25 games. Those 41 wins are going to be vacated due to impermissible benefits given to student athletes, impermissible publicity, as I'll get into, just a couple recruiting violations essentially. But the impermissible benefits included tickets to Giants games, the U.S. Open, photo shoots in Times Square with family members. That is your impermissible publicity. You give them team gear, you take pictures in Times Square like that. I think the rule is like official visits, you can take the photos if they're just kind of there and it's not an official documented visit or whatnot. Like then there seems to be a gray area. But NCAA allows you have a 75 entertainment spend per day limit, so to speak, which in New York, not much. You're showing these people around. This is a place where people are going to live. This is where they're going to spend potentially 4 years. You want to show them around a little bit. But $75, Kyle, gets you maybe a couple slices of pizza in New York City. Doesn't get you very much. You know that. So the investigation concluded that Fordham, they had a couple overages in their per day spending limit, upwards of just under $5,600, and Kyle as little as $35. So not sure why this is where the NCAA draws the line in the sand. But Keith Ergo spoke about this in the New York Post. I was reading an article yesterday, and he's like, "This war on me, a war on our team. It was evident. I'm glad I can get back to doing my thing and coaching because this has been a huge weight on me. So glad that this is over." But Kyle Neptune's 16 wins from his first coaching year at Fordham, first and only coaching year at Fordham, are gone because of this. So Kyle, in summation here, before we get to the meat and potatoes, I will give you a quote from the great Jerry Tarkanian to wrap us up here on the Fordham investigation. In quotes, "The NCAA is so mad at Kentucky, it's going to give Cleveland State 2 more years probation. Let the big boys, let the powers that be run wild, pay you all you want, give you money in McDonald's bags, offer you to transfer to a school in the handshake line if you play well in a bye game, pay people out the wazoo, have an 8-figure roster for next year, pay freshmen millions of dollars, but God forbid Fordham took somebody to the U.S. Open or went $35 over on an entertainment charge and the hammer comes down. It's really a shame, Kyle."
It's silly. It's really dumb. Also, though, Cope, I don't know if I necessarily blame the NCAA for wanting to penalize schools for taking prospective students to New York Giants games. I don't know why they would do that. That's. I thought they wanted entertainment. I don't know if Giants football in the last 10 years or so has been entertaining. Although, as a Jets fan, it doesn't have a lot of weight coming from me. But sorry, I just want to poke a little fun at the Giants. But yeah, not good.
Like they should be, that should be a write-off. That should be okay.
Right. Yeah,
it should be okay. Like,
they're donating. It's charity work.
They watched really shitty football. It was a nice gesture to take somebody to a football game. They
also, Cope, the football coach was engaging in sports betting activities at Fordham too, which is part of this investigation.
That's the
great
right there.
That's now that I don't blame them for. Can't do that.
Yeah,
can't do that.
Okay, but
yeah,
come on. Keith Ergo's a good dude. He's a really good coach.
And Kyle Neptune's a good dude too.
What are we doing here?
No idea.
Anyway, Kyle.
Anyway, back to the.
Before we rant about the NCAA for an hour.
Yeah, we'll tackle that topic maybe another time. But for now, some more transfers in the Big Five that we have to go over. Of course, I alluded to the fact that people can still declare to go pro and not just the NBA. And I was alluding to something later in the episode. That is right now, because we're going to talk about Mac Etienne, the former LaSalle big who announced his intentions to pursue a pro career. Also did enter the transfer portal, but it seems like he's going to go pro. So that can be in a plethora of different places. But shout out to Mac Etienne. I hope you have a long and successful pro career, whether that's in America, overseas, wherever the case may be. But happy trails, Mac Etienne. I hope he has a wonderful career playing pro. Excuse me. Cope, late last night, we got a commitment to LaSalle. Obviously, we talked about the 3 last time that they that committed to LaSalle and Rob Dockery, Jaden Johnson, Edwin Daniel. Jose Grullon. I hope I said his name right. Grullon, potentially. Grullon.
Jose
Grullon.
Grullon.
We're learning together because it's been not even 24 hours after this recording that he committed. Former UT Martin transfer coming over to LaSalle, playing on 20th and only this year. Averaged about 12 a game last year for UT Martin. I believe he was among the leaders in blocks too, Cope, if I got that right.
Was that Edwin Daniel?
No, I was talking about Grullon.
Oh no,
I'm mistaken.
Edwin Daniel's your guy. He was the rebounds and blocks leader.
That's who I'm talking about.
In JUCO last year.
Excuse me then.
Now Grullon's a shooter.
Yes.
They're gonna need him. Like they got Jaden Johnson here, who was not a great 3-point shooter at Old Dominion last year. So certainly need Grullon in there is a good 3-point shooter, do his thing. A fun fact on him, ready? I tweeted this out last night. So prior to this was first year at UT Martin this past year. Before that, he was at Daytona State College playing basketball with Victor Penn, all from Drexel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Listen, the Big Five might be among the smallest worlds to exist. Everything connects to the Big Five, Cope. You know that. But a good get nonetheless for LaSalle. And obviously, admittedly, I don't know a ton about him. I will be doing more research on him as the summer and into the next season goes on. But seemingly a good get for LaSalle. They were kind of teasing it last night, and then later in the night it broke that this was the person who they were getting. So good for LaSalle. As far as people leaving, and we're going to tie this in, Cope, to people committing elsewhere too. The first ever transfer, Cope, between the Philadelphia A-10 schools, that would be LaSalle and St. Joe's, because yes, Deuce Jones has officially committed to St. Joe's. I know last episode we talked about a little bit how he made an Instagram post in St. Joe's uniform, tweeting hashtag not committed. I've seen a couple guys do that. It seemed like that from that post, that is where the leading candidate was for him, and it turned out to be true that Deuce Jones will be playing on Hawk Hill next year. Rarefied air, of course. We've had inter Big Five transfers. We even had one earlier just a few weeks ago with Zion Stanford going from Temple to Villanova. We had 4 last season, I believe, and this is still rare, though, Cope, because interconference and inter Big Five transfer. And obviously, we talked at length last episode about how Xavier Brown was heading to Oklahoma, and they're going to need to try to replace his scoring production. He was on pace for an all-time career on Hawk Hill. I think this is the perfect guy. If there was a guy to try to replace Xavier Brown's production, this is the perfect guy to start here. So I think this is a really good fit for them. Obviously very familiar with the program, played St. Joe's 4 times last year, but really athletic guard, can get downhill, tenacious on defense, and just his energy overall on the court. Definitely not the exact same player that Xavier Brown is, and I'm going to let you expand on that too, but I think similar in some areas that they can replicate, and they're not, again, the exact same player, so you're not going to replicate exactly what he did. But Cope, a really good get for St. Joe's, and I think a really good fit for Deuce Jones. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the best that realistically St. Joe's could have done here to replace Xavier Brown. You're simply not going to do that. Look, you're not going to upgrade from Eric Reynolds and Xavier Brown. You're not going to upgrade from the school's all-time leading scorer and a guy who I think is going to not only, I don't think he is going to be a starting point guard in the SEC. So I did not mean to say that like I had reservations about that. He certainly is. He will be a very high-paid player in the SEC. And Kyle, I think he will be one of the better guards in the SEC, in the best league in America. You're simply not going to upgrade from that. But to try and put the pieces back together, a guy in Deuce that they saw play a bunch of times. They've seen him at his best. They saw what he can bring on both ends. The Big Five championship game was a total lightning rod. And even if he wasn't scoring to his ability in that game, even though he did and was very, very good, just that energy, that heart, that hustle, that tenacity, he's going to be a huge tone setter on both sides of the ball for them. So gets to the free throw line really well, just a downright lethal first step. I mean, this guy's quickness is off the charts. Get downhill, great athlete, can finish when he's there, can shoot. Like, he is as good of an on-ball replacement as you could have asked for. Now, got to cut turnovers down. But as a young guy, that'll come. He'll grow into it. There'll be some bumps. That's all right. I mean, he's only going to be a rising sophomore, is now going to have the keys to an A-10 team with expectations for himself, with expectations for this team that's been knocking on the door of being one of the premier ones in the Atlantic 10. But just so much to like about this guy. His offensive skill, his defensive tenacity, his athleticism. Like, this is a guy with 3 years of eligibility left that, knock on wood, you hope he'd stay and see that out, because St. Joe's will likely have a pretty penny to be able to keep him no matter the offers that come in. So, well, I shouldn't say no matter, because we just saw Xavier Brown leave, but that's totally besides the point. Bottom line is a really good player that you've seen a bunch, a really good player, Kyle, that you know can be really good in this league. it's as good as a replacement as you could have hoped for realistically with these guys. So it's going to be really weird seeing him in a St. Joe's uniform. It's going to take a little bit to process, but there's a coaching change. It opens the door for something like this to happen. I thought he was going to go high major and there was going to be people clamoring for him here. But hey, this is still a really good league. It's a good spot where the keys are going to be yours. You're going to have the ball in their hand. We'll be talking about the guy that he'll be passing to next. But I think it's still a very good situation. It's great for St. Joe's to get a guy like this. Great for Deuce Jones that he gets to beat a program like this. And let's be real, Kyle, he's getting a payday to do so.
Yeah, LaSalle not among the high spenders in the A10. We'll put it that way, and that's being extremely nice about it. They're toward the bottom, at the bottom.
They are.
They are at the bottom. So definitely a good payday for him. Cope, really good segue by you because as I was going to mention after this, again late last night, another commitment to the A10 in Philadelphia, and that would be Jaden Glover leaving St. John's, going to St. Joe's. So one not SJU, one actually SJU. He'll be playing for this year. But Cope, former four-star recruit, played sparingly last year. He appeared in 22 games, but only averaged 6.4 minutes a game. So didn't really play a ton. But a lot of talent there. I think, obviously Rick Pitino recruited him to St. John's. There is something there. And he will be more or less replacing Eric Reynolds II, who is the all-time leading scorer in the program. Is he going to be asked to replicate exactly what Reynolds did? No, very hard to do. But this is now your backcourt for at least the next year. And obviously things change college basketball all the time. I think St. Joe's fans thought Xavier Brown was going to be there for the foreseeable future. I think LaSalle fans thought Deuce Jones was going to be there for the foreseeable future. I thought Temple fans thought Zion Stanford would be there for the next 2 years. So these things change a lot, but a really good get for St. Joe's and someone who's going to contribute right away and add a bunch of talent to a team that lost a bunch of talent. So this is a really good get for Billy Lang and company. Cope, how do you see him fitting in now with his new backcourt mate in Deuce Jones?
I think he fits in great, Kyle. And I just want to point out something I was reading.
Like a glove?
I was distracted for a second. Well, no, St. Joe's put the press release out and called him Jaden Glover Toscano. So if that's the case, want to call him by his name that he wants to go by here. Might take a little bit of getting used to, just like the CAA calling it the Coastal instead of the Colonial. But that's all right. I want to call Jaden Glover Toscano by the name that he would like. But on the court, like, this is exactly the type of guy you wanted to bring in. And don't forget, Kyle, this is a guy that St. Joe's was after really heavy. And even though Justin Scott's not there anymore, this is a guy that Justin Scott was after really hard. Like, when this guy put his final 8 schools out, there was Providence. There was St. John's. And being a Brooklyn guy, of course, St. John's had all the momentum with Pitino in his second year. And St. Joe's was on there. Like, this is a guy that clearly, like, he will be paid handsomely. But clearly he sees that, like, this is a place that really, really wants him. They have a role that he can fit into. And even though he seldom played, had an injury, and played behind R.J. Lewis and played behind Kadari Richmond and Davon Smith and a healthy Brady Dunlap, like, this is a perfect spot for him to play a lot. He won't have a log jam like that. He will be the guy here. This is a place that wants him and needs his scoring ability. He's a tough shot maker. He's got size. He shoots the three well, got a nice looking jump shot. Like, this is your off the ball scorer now. And he has all the prerequisites, although maybe he didn't see it last year. Again, given the injury, the lineup that St. John's has. I think in the A10, this can be one of the best scorers in the league. Whether we see it now or next year, we're not going wood, because like you said, just take things one day at a time. You don't know what's going to happen a year from now. But this is an off ball scorer with the 4-star pedigree that was at a Big East school. Like, this is a knock it out of the park get for me in my book. Because, again, like, you're not going to simply replace your backcourt from last year. I think this, realistically, Kyle, I think this is as good as you could have done. This is as good as you could have asked for. It's somebody that the program is familiar with. They played Deuce Jones a bunch. They recruited the heck out of Jaden Glover. Like, imagine an A10 school and a guy who's got a bunch of power schools in his final 8. Like, I think he recognized that there was a role here he could play. These people want him, and his scoring ability and his skill set to be a guy that plays off of Deuce Jones, can make tough shots. I think there's some nights like, look, this is going to be a young backcourt with two sophomores and a guy in Jaden Glover didn't play a lot last year. But when these guys are both on, they're going to give people headaches in this league, Kyle. But it's not going to come without its bumps. Like this is a young backcourt. You heard Billy Lang say last year a bunch of times, we're going to play the most freshmen and sophomores of anyone in the A-10. Probably going to happen again this year. They'll be young, but when it's good, Kyle, it's going to be good. I think the Jaden Glover, Deuce Jones backcourt is going to be quite good at times for St. Joe's. I think this is as good as they could have done, again, realistically, with the money they have, with who would have went to St. Joe's as opposed to turn St. Joe's down for a power offer. Like, this is as good as you could have done. I think you have to be at least satisfied to a T if you're a Hawks fan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cope, another transfer that came in today for Temple. The first transfer that Temple has gotten in this cycle. Yes, finally, Temple has a name to go over, and that name would be Jemai Felt, coming over from Bowling Green, all freshman MAC team this year. Cope, they got a big guy to patrol the paint here. I don't know a ton about him other than the accolades that they put out today when they announced Jemai Felt committing. Cope, finally they have someone seemingly who, has some talent, played a little bit of a lower level this year, but how good does it at least feel to just get a player in? It's only been players out for Temple.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen eventually.
It was going to happen eventually.
Put a team together.
Yes.
But this was not a team that was great at the rim last year and blocking a lot of shots. Now you're bringing in a guy that can. So 1.4 blocks a game for Jemai Felt. It's Kyle. It's kind of hard to say like he's got 3 years of eligibility left when you just don't know what can happen year to year. And we just saw 6 people leave Temple in this cycle, but he's got years left, years to grow. I think this is not too big of a jump for him. But the bottom line is like, hey, this guy, his role in his team is not going to be complicated. Protect the rim. This was one of the quote unquote it's not like this was like a 360th worst team at the rim in block percentage. But this was not one of the Americans' best protecting the rim. This was not one of the country's best teams protecting the rim. Jemai Felt's going to help out with that. So adds another big to Babatunde Dordo, like Mo Keita, who seldom played last year. You know, this is a guy that will play more than him and has the defensive upside that perhaps a Mo Keita doesn't have, even with his size. But regardless, bottom line is, so you stockpile another big. This one, Baba's got some offensive skill. This is your guy who maybe doesn't have that offensive skill, but that's all right because he's quite the defender and was a freshman and was in the MAC last year. So a defensive piece, a defensive addition at the rim that hopefully Kyle will make this team, and I believe it will make this team a better defensive team at the 10.
Yeah, and maybe we could see some 2-man lineups with both of them in there. Bob at the 4, Felt at the 5 potentially. I'm sure Adam Fisher will explore that because, more right now there's not a whole lot of people on the team. But when there's more and it fills out, I think that could be a potential fit there. And I think they could play really well together. So something to look out for coming in November on Temple's campus. All right, Cope, and one more school to go over here. We recorded on Wednesday last week. We were going to release on Friday, hoping nothing crazy happened on Thursday. And then, of course, 3 people commit to Villanova on Thursday. So we're going to go over them right now, and that would be Duke Brennan from Grand Canyon, Bryce Lindsey from James Madison, and Braden Pierce from Maryland. And Cope, I think the name that I'm most excited for, despite there being a high major transfer in here, is Bryce Lindsey coming over from James Madison. Double-digit scorer per game last year for them. I know 2 years ago he wasn't on the team, but they made the tournament. So not this year, they didn't make the tournament, but still a player in the Sun Belt for sure. And I think someone who can definitely translate to this level. He'll obviously now have competition in the backcourt with Zion Stanford, who we mentioned last episode, not being sure what his role would be because they only had a few players on the roster. Now you add 3 more. Tyler Perkins is staying, so he'll for sure be in the mix in the backcourt. Matthew Hodge is staying as well, pending his, availability via clearance from the NCAA, which hopefully he'll get this year, and we can go over that too. But Cope, I think a lot to be excited about from these 3, but I think especially Bryce Lindsey. I'm really excited about this. I think he's going to be adding a lot of scoring firepower in the backcourt for Villanova this year. But what do you think of him, and what do you think of the other two transfers in here as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to touch on Bryce Lindsey and then touch on Duke Brennan. And then, quite frankly, I want to touch on Hodge because I'm excited about him coming back. Because he was a guy that was recruited also by Kevin Willard at Maryland. And I think there's a perfect marriage. Hodge wants to be at Villanova. Willard is willing to keep him and is excited about him. So I'll touch on him. But yeah, Bryce Lindsey might be the premier scorer on this team, Kyle. And the way that this team is at least shaped right now, still with plenty of room for additions, this will be the premier scorer on this team. Almost a 50, 40, 90 season from him last year. Just a hair under 85% from the free throw line. Is a guy that shot almost 55% from two and a 40% plus 3-point shooter. He's got deep range, a quick trigger, took care of the ball last year, especially in conference play, and was efficient too. Like, this guy was the complete focal point of this offense. This is a good JMU team last year. It really was under Preston Spradlin. But this guy was relied upon so much with the scoring acumen. And even with the bulk of the load that he had, having the ball in his hands so much, still found a way to be efficient and not be a turnover machine having the ball in your hands that much. Like, he is not only take care of the ball, but a good assist man too. Like, there's so much to like about this guy, Kyle, on all three levels, but this guy's got in the gym range. A really good shooter, a deep shooter that you have to honor and respect. Like, this guy is quite the microwave scorer. And if you didn't watch a lot of Sun Belt basketball last year, know much about this guy, Kyle. Villanova fans on the main line and people in the Big Five, you will find out Bryce Lindsey's name very, very soon. This was a terrific, terrific pickup. He was at Texas A&M 2 years ago. Barely played just 8 games, transfers down, goes to James Madison, lights it up. This guy's ready, and I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to get back into a power league, and I think he's going to fit in really, really well, potentially being the linchpin of Kevin Willard's offense in year one.
Which would be a sight to see. And Cope, one point I want to bring up too about kind of the roster construction. I think Kevin Willard, one, has done a really good job just bringing in talent. Obviously, with a lot of the roster departing or graduating or what have you, it's, it can be hard to replace talent. Maybe not so much if you're Villanova, but still, it's something that had to be done. So I think he deserves some credit there. But also, I think he's setting up nicely for the future. And Cope, I know you had brought up before from his press conference how he brought up, maybe paraphrasing here, but like building a foundation and building for the future. And I think he's doing that. And one thing I wanted to bring up was that it's really important in this day and age, despite the craziness of the transfer portal and players moving around and whatnot, and teams trying to patch together teams with players moving so much, roster continuity is still what wins. And I want to actually bring up an article that was posted today by Evan Mia, who I know we've brought up before, for tournament stuff. Great analytics site. Definitely go check him out. But one of the things he put out an article for roster construction best practices. Obviously, adding talent is first and foremost. You have to have talent in your team to win. But his second point was returning players should account for at least 50% of playing time. And he had put out a tweet, I believe it was around the time the Final Four, somewhere between when the Final Four was not named, but when all the teams qualified and then when it actually happened a few weeks ago. But here are the percentages of minutes played by returning players on each of the teams of the Final Four this year, which we're all one seeds and we're all some of the best teams that we've seen in college basketball in the last 25 years. Houston, 82% of their minutes returned from last year. Florida, 70%. Auburn, 69%. And then Duke, only 22%. They had a lot of freshmen in this year's class and some players coming over from other places as well.
They also had 3 lottery picks, so I think that's a good way to...
Yes, they had 3 lottery picks. They were freshmen, but yeah. It works. And that's, not a knock at Duke at all about the returning players. They had the most talented team in the country this year. Just based off of obviously having the 3 lottery picks, other guys who were there for some time, like Tyrese Proctor, who's going to be maybe not a lottery pick, but he'll play in the NBA, that's for sure. And I think UConn the previous 2 years had above 50, if not 55% of returning players from their rosters as well, before they went on to win back-to-back championships. So the reason I bring this up is because all of these guys, and I believe there's 9 of them now, 8 of them, I'm not really good at math, all of them have at least 2 years of eligibility left. Obviously, Chris Jeffrey's a freshman. He'll have 4. Zion Stanford, 2 after coming over from Temple. Duke Brennan will have 2. Bryce Lindsey will have 2. Braden Pierce, I think, will have more than 2, Cope. I think he'll have at least 3. Hodge will have 4 once he gets cleared, and Perkins will have 2 as well. And Malachi Palmer, I believe, will have 2 as well. So all of these guys coming in here will have at least 2 years of eligibility. And that's not to say that they're all going to stay at Villanova. Obviously, we see players with eligibility leaving a lot. A lot of players entered the transfer portal this year, probably more than stayed on their rosters. So things can change very quickly. This time next year, we might be talking about a completely different Villanova team. But to Kevin Willard's point that he brought up in press conferences, he's trying to build a foundation. And you see him doing that in the way he's constructing this roster with guys who have multiple years left of eligibility, because maybe they might not win a lot this year. I think the goal for this year is to get Villanova back in the NCAA tournament, and we'll see what happens. I think that goal is very possible with the talent that is coming in. I wouldn't expect them to compete for a championship. I don't think the composition of this will allow them to in year one. Crazy things have happened. We'll see. But statistically speaking, it is highly unlikely that that will happen. But it is setting them up nicely to take that leap next year. If a lot of these guys stay and they return a lot of their roster, over half of their roster to be exact, then maybe they can compete for a championship. And that's what Villanova fans and Big Five fans expect. That's what the college basketball world expects from Villanova. I think before we started this pod, Cope, around 2022, by the time Jay Wright retired, they were considered a modern blue blood. And obviously, 3-year tournament drought now, maybe the attention on that has gone away from Villanova fans, especially with UConn winning back-to-back, now Florida winning their 3rd championship in the last 20 or so years. Those teams are now moving up the rankings for sure. And I think this is a chance for Villanova to build something, get back to that national recognition of being a modern blue blood. This is the perfect way to do it. So shout out to Kevin Willard. Early returns are great so far, and obviously we'll see what happens on the basketball court. We're not trying to win the offseason. You know who won the offseason in the NFL the last few years, Cope? The New York Jets. Look how that turned out. So winning the offseason is not the goal, but building a foundation certainly is. I think Kevin Willard's doing a great job at that. Cope, that's pretty much it for this episode. We don't really have a whole lot more. I know we had a lot of transfer things and other things to go over, but certainly it's not over yet, though it will be dwindling down a little bit. But any final thoughts before we sign off here and go watch some NBA playoff basketball and the NFL draft and go on with our week?
Yeah, well, but yeah, very fluid situation. We'll be back with more. We're not anywhere near done quite yet. Be nice to get some R&R, hit the beach pretty soon, but we have a lot more transfer portal, and for some people, hey, like the summer recruiting season's going to be here, so there's going to be some freshmen to speak about. So we're not anywhere close to done, and quite frankly, Kyle, will never be done. This goes all day, every day, all year, which is great. But yeah, excited for tonight. The draft is always great. How about the Broncos when this episode comes out? Ready? I'm going to give you 5 names.
Okay.
Maybe. See if I can get 4 or 5. Colston Loveland. Am I saying this lad's name right? Is it Titaroa McMillan?
I believe that's how you say his first
From
name.
Arizona? Okay. We need a weapon because some of our guys were construction workers last year. So Colston Loveland, Titaroa McMillan, Amarian Hampton.
That's who I think you guys should pick.
I think Amarian Hampton might be the guy.
Yeah.
Travion Henderson, or if we want to trade up, which trading up for a running back in the first round, I mean, would make some older people probably fall over in their chair, Kyle, and throw the remote at the TV. But you can't not watch Ashton Genty and be like, shit, we need a running back. That guy he'd be pretty nice, right?
Yeah.
It's a fever dream. But that's all right. Let's get a weapon for Bo Nix. Let's make the playoffs next year. Let's make a run. But one of those 5 guys will be a Denver Bronco when this episode comes out. We'll see who it is.
And Cope, for me, Jets are picking at 7. My ideal scenario would be Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. I think he would be perfect next to Quinnen Williams. But if not him, I believe his name is Membo from Missouri, the offensive tackle. I might not be saying his name right, but I think he could be definitely in play here. Will Campbell, I don't think will fall, the interior lineman from LSU, but I think the Patriots are going to get him at 4. But if he falls to 7, that would be a really good one. I think the most likely scenario is Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. I think that would be a great weapon. So I think one of those 4 most likely will be on the Jets after we air this episode. But also Breece Hall's in trade rumors. I don't know what's going to happen. Cope, this is going to be a crazy draft. So we'll see what happens there. Important things, though, for you guys that are not NFL draft related. A programming note, we will not have an episode next week because I am moving and I have to tear down everything in my room. So take a look at this setup for the last time. All these tchotchkes here on my wall. It's going to be the last time you're seeing it like this because I'm moving. My girlfriend and I are moving in together, so we're going to be moving. How many times can I say that? Next week. And yeah, gonna have to tear this stuff down probably tonight after we record this, after I edit this episode, Cope. So yes, no program next week. We're gonna be back in 2 weeks in a new setup, which I don't know what it'll look like yet. So stay tuned. We're gonna find out together. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in for this episode, of course. And if you want to check us out on YouTube, you know where to find us, Big Five Pod. If you want to check us out in our audio only versions of this podcast, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And of course, to keep up to date with things during this mini hiatus here, of course, check us out on Twitter at Big Five Pod and Instagram, same thing. So Cope, it's been a pleasure. The last episode in this room, it's been plenty. Been here for 2 years. So we will see you in the new place.
Happy trails.